Hi everyone, I'm John. When I was 9 years old, I woke up one morning to my mom's crying. She said, "John, your dad is gone. He left us," and hugged me. She was holding a piece of paper. It said, "I'm tired of both of you." This was Dad's goodbye note. For years, I had a recurring dream where my dad was saying to me, "I'm tired of you." I missed him a lot, but at the same time, I hated him for leaving us like that. 6 years later, I came home from school one day and saw my dad eating at the kitchen table. When he saw me, he stood up with a smile on his face. He opened his arms and waited for me to give him a hug. I asked Mom, "What is this man doing here?" She looked away without saying anything. I looked at my dad. He was still waiting with arms wide open, smiling. "Why did you come back after all these years?" I yelled. He said, "This is my house. I can come and go as I please. I'm not going to ask you for permission," and sat down to continue eating. My dad's a cook and my mom's a waitress. They used to work at the same restaurant. After he disappeared, my mom kept working at her job, but she had to work a lot more because she had to support us by herself. I thought Dad's return meant my mom could relax a little, but that didn't happen. He was sleeping until noon and then either watching TV or playing games on his phone all day. One evening, as I was eating dinner with Mom, Dad came into the kitchen. He said, "I have a great idea for us. We will save up our money and open our own restaurant." My mom got excited. She said, "I've been dreaming of this for years. Let's open a nice Italian restaurant." Then Dad said to me, "Of course, you'll need to help us too. Find yourself a part-time job you can do after school. You've been living here rent-free your whole life. It's time you start paying us back." I was so frustrated. "Does this mean that you will also start working?" I asked. Dad's response didn't make any sense. "Do you think it's easy to open a restaurant? There are so many decisions to be made. I need to focus on that so I can make the best decision. And I can only do that at home with a clear head." Dad continued to sit at home, just like he said he would. My mom was now working weekends to be able to make some more money. I found a job delivering pizza. Because I was too young to get a driver's license, I was making deliveries on foot, which left me dead tired. Still, I was going along with it for my mom's sake. Both my mom and I were giving every penny we made to our dad. After counting the money, Dad would say to me every time, "Is that all you got? Are you sure you're not holding back? Empty those pockets and let's see." Even though I was pissed, I couldn't say anything. Before he left us, I had been too young to see that side of him. But now that I finally got to know him, I hated him. Even though it was exhausting, I still liked some parts of my pizza delivery job. I'd gotten to know many people who regularly ordered pizza in my neighborhood. For example, one of the customers was a famous singer, and once he gave me a hat he'd worn at a concert. And I had developed a huge crush on another customer. I'd get super nervous every time she ordered pizza, and I had to go to her house. There was also a guy I liked to call Mr. Loose Change. He was a geeky type in his 30s with very long hair and beard. I could tell he didn't have a lot of money because he always paid for the pizza with loose change. And sometimes he'd still be short, even after putting together all of his coins. "Don't worry about it," I would say, and he'd be embarrassed. He always said, "One day, I'll give you the biggest tip of your life." I was sure he would do it if he had the money, but I'd never even seen him pay with an actual bill. One day, something weird happened as I was doing a delivery. I was waiting to cross a street. The light turned green. As I was crossing, I saw my dad in the driver's seat of one of the cars waiting at the light. He didn't see me because he was looking at his phone. I was really surprised because we didn't own a car. I took out my phone and snapped a picture. When the light turned green, my dad sped away. Where did this car come from? Had my dad secretly gotten himself a car with all the money that we'd been making? I was so angry. I sent the photo to my mom. She later told me that when she asked him about it, my dad tried to deny it. When she showed him the photo, he lied and said, "That car is a rental." But finally, he had to come clean. It had only been 3 weeks since he'd bought the car. When he wasn't driving it, he had been parking it at garage nearby. "I made a mistake. That money was for our restaurant. Please forgive me," he begged. After she told me all this, my mom said, "Your dad regrets what he's done. He'll sell the car. I think he deserves another chance." I felt for my mom. She didn't want to fight with my dad because she was afraid of being single again. The next evening, my dad parked the car in front of the house. In the morning, as I was getting ready for school, he came to my room. He handed me the car keys. He said, "The car is dirty. Wash it. Then take pictures. I will post them online to sell it." As if that weren't enough, he bossed me around as I was washing the car, saying, "Vacuum the trunk and clean this spot better." I was really angry, but I tried hard to stay calm and not lash out at him. After school, I went to work in a bad mood. I really didn't want to work, but I had no other choice. Towards the end of my shift, I got an order from Mr. Loose Change. As always, when he opened the door, he smiled and said, "My friend, come in. This is my last pizza order. I'm moving out of this place tomorrow. But before that, I have to keep the promise I made you. I will give you the biggest tip you've ever gotten." My biggest tip so far has been $20, so you have to give me 21 to beat it, I said, laughing. I went inside and looked around. The place was packed with computers. Mr. Loose Change pointed to a big bag sitting on the floor. "Go ahead, open it," he said. I opened it. It was filled to the brim with money. I stared at him in disbelief. "There's $1 million in there and it's all yours," he said. I was in shock. All I could say was, "Thank you." As I was leaving his apartment, he said, "Don't worry, the money is completely legal. I didn't rob a bank or anything," he said. "Are you a hacker?" I asked. He laughed. "No, I'm not. Do you know what cryptocurrency is?" "Yes, Bitcoin," I replied. "Bitcoin is the famous one. There are a lot of other coins. I've been working on developing my own coin for the past 3.5 years. I finally did it. Now I have a lot of money. In a few years, I'll probably become a billionaire. It wasn't easy, and you're one of the people who supported me when I was struggling. I'm grateful to you," he said, hugging me. A few minutes later, I was walking down the street with $1 million in my bag. I couldn't believe it, but I'd become a millionaire. That was great, but what would I do with the money? There was no way I was going to tell my dad about it. He'd take all of it. I had to hide it somewhere safe. When I got home, I took the bag straight to my room. When I came to the kitchen to get a snack, I saw my mom sitting there, crying. "Mom, what happened?" I asked. "Your dad sold the car, but then he took the money to a casino and gambled with it. And he lost everything," she said. "Gambled? Why would he gamble?" I began to say, and my mom started sobbing even more. At that moment, my dad walked in and said, "If I'd won, I would have made 2 or 3 times the money. Then we would have opened the restaurant right away, but I didn't." He didn't bother to apologize. Instead, he yelled at me. Finally, he said, "I'm too upset to fight with you," and left. I gave my mom a hug. I told her, "Dad is a very selfish person. I never believed he would open a restaurant. All he wanted to do was to get us to work and make money off of us." Mom said, "He was always selfish. I waited for him to change, but he hasn't, and he never will. That's who he is." She finally realized it for herself. I felt relief when I heard that. "Mom, I'm going to show you something," I said and brought her the bag. She couldn't believe her eyes when she saw the money. I told her the whole story. My mom had the same reaction. She said, "Your dad should never see this money. We have to leave before he comes home." I said, "That's the best idea I've ever heard in my life." We quickly packed our suitcases, then we called a cab. Just as we were leaving, I had an idea. I was going to leave a goodbye note for Dad. "Mom, you get in the cab. I'll be there in a sec," I said. In my bedroom, I took all the money out of the bag and spread it on the bed. I sat in the middle. I took a bunch of selfies, then I printed them all out. Finally, I put those selfies up on the walls around the house. Then I ran out and got in the cab. We went to a hotel at the other end of town. A couple of hours later, my mom's phone rang. It was my dad. Mom didn't pick up. 10 seconds later, Dad called me. When I didn't pick up either, he started sending messages. He had apparently seen the photos I'd put up on the walls. First, he wrote, "Where did this money come from?" and "Whose money is this?" He was trying to understand. When we didn't reply, he got mad. He started threatening us. "Bring me that money now or you'll regret it." When that didn't work either, he wrote, "My dear wife, my dear son, you misunderstood me. I love you very much. Please come back home." Of course, we didn't answer him. The next day, the first thing we did was change our phone numbers. Years ago, my dad had left us with a note that said, "I'm tired of both of you." Now, it was our turn, and I had to make sure to leave him a goodbye note that would haunt him forever. We now live in a little beach town. My dad won't find us here. We bought a cute house on the water. The best part is, last month, Mom opened her dream restaurant. The business is great. My dad was a troublemaker. We're so happy to have gotten rid of him.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Here's My Story channel. I'm Devin. The weirdest thing happened to me last month. My twin sister Brianna barged into my room and said, "You might fool everyone, but you can't fool me. You're not my twin sister. Who are you? Why are you acting like my sister?" I stared at her, trying to see if she was joking. She looked dead serious. I said, "Brianna, are you okay? We're identical twins. We look exactly the same. Even Dad sometimes can't tell us apart. We're twins whether you like it or not." Brianna didn't seem to hear me. She said, "Look at you, still lying. But you can't fool me anymore. You're not my sister and I'm going to prove it. Everyone will know you're an imposter," and left. I was dumbfounded. Why would Brianna do something like that? No matter how much I thought about it, I couldn't come up with an explanation. It was true that we hadn't been on good terms for a few weeks. We had fought over something silly. When that happens, we usually stay away from each other. We even eat dinner at different times. Like all other siblings, there are times when we don't talk to each other, but this time it had gone on for too long. Still, it didn't make any sense for her to come and tell me, "You're not my twin and I'm going to prove it." To be honest, Brianna is not only my twin sister, she's also my best friend. It actually makes sense because since we were identical twins, both our faces and our personalities are exactly alike. For me, this is nothing short of a miracle, and I always think I'm really lucky. But now my sister, who is always telling me how much she loved me, was acting as if I was her worst enemy. My mom was also aware that we weren't getting along. There's a burger place that we always go to. She took us there. She said, "Girls, I think this has gone too far. It's time to end whatever this is," trying to get us to make up. But Brianna wasn't interested. The whole dinner, she didn't say a word and just stared at me. It really freaked me out. When I woke up the next morning, I saw 2 pieces of paper on the floor. Someone must have slid them under the door while I was sleeping. I couldn't believe my eyes when I read what was written on them. One said, "Who are you?" And the other, "Where is the real Devin?" I ran to my mom and showed her the notes. Naturally, she didn't get it. "What are these?" she asked. I said, "Brianna has been telling me weird things like, 'You're not my sister. Why are you acting like you are?' And she slid these under my door last night. Mom, she's scaring me." My mom laughed. She said, "Oh, Devin, all Brianna wants to do is scare you. You girls are exactly the same, but your sister has always been a step ahead when it comes to creativity. See, she still knows how to be creative even in a fight." I knew Brianna was doing all this to scare me. I was really annoyed because she had actually succeeded. That night, Dad called both of us. "Your mom told me you two are having some issues. We're putting an end to this. I signed both of you up for summer camp. You will remember how much you like each other after living together in a tent for 2 weeks," he said. Both Brianna and I protested, but Dad wouldn't listen. "This is not your decision. Your mom and I already made the call. We're going there first thing in the morning. Pack your bags," he said. Before I continue with my story, I just want to make a quick reminder. If you're enjoying this video, please click the like button now and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. This way you'll be notified when new videos drop. Thanks so much. Now, back to the story. The following day, we drove 50 miles to get to the camp, which was in a national park. To be honest, this was the perfect summer camp for high schoolers like us. Normally, we would have both jumped at the offer, but this was not a good time because we literally hated each other. They showed us to our tent. Brianna dropped off her bag and started going out. "Where are you going?" I asked. "I'm going to look for a place to stay. Do you think I'm that stupid? I'll never stay in the same tent as you," she said. "Brianna, please cut this. You're not my twin nonsense. You're scaring me," I said. She looked at me like she was surprised. "I'm the one who needs to be scared. I'm with an imposter who's saying she's my twin sister. If I tell my parents, they'll think I'm crazy. That's why I need proof, and I'm going to get it." I couldn't believe my ears. She still wouldn't drop this stupid game. I was furious. "Find yourself a place to stay then. I don't want to see you again until this thing's over," I screamed. She left without a word. I was so mad I started crying, and I couldn't help but wonder, why is she doing this to me? Suddenly, I had an idea. I could find out exactly what Brianna was thinking and why she was acting like this from her journal. We both started keeping journals in elementary school. After a while, I gave up, but Brianna wrote in hers every day. Sometimes she would bring her journal to my room, flip to a random page, and start reading. Then we would talk about that day. I knew that she was writing down every single detail of her day. I was so anxious as I opened Brianna's bag. I was right. She had brought her journal with her. I was sweating bullets. She could come in any second. I opened it and started reading. I was once again convinced that that thing is not Devin. It's imitating Devin. It looks like her, acts like her, but it can't fool me because I know my sister better than it does. It's trying to laugh like Devin, but it can't. Devin squints as she laughs. That thing can't do it. Every time it laughs, I can tell that it's not Devin. Oh my God, what was she saying? She was seriously thinking I wasn't her real twin sister. She was calling me that thing. My ear started ringing. I felt so weak that I almost collapsed. At that moment, Brianna walked in. She saw me holding her journal. She leapt and grabbed it from my hand. It's all here. You can't even guess what's going to happen to you once I prove you're not Devin. You think you can fool me, but you're wrong. Where's Devin? Give me my sister back now! I was speechless. I managed to mumble something like, Brianna, I love you more than anything in the world, and ran out. I had no idea what made Brianna believe in something so crazy, but I was sure I wouldn't be able to convince her otherwise. I had to tell my parents about all of this right away. When I called them up and started telling them, they first thought Brianna had been teasing me. They even laughed. But when I started crying my heart out as I was telling the things I'd read in her journal, they realized this was serious. Nothing I'd told them made any sense, but they started getting worried. They drove to the camp. Dad said, Devin, you wait here. We'll go for a walk with Brianna. When they returned, they looked so upset. Apparently, Brianna had told them, too, that I wasn't the real Devin. Brianna kept saying, I knew you wouldn't believe me, but you will both apologize to me when you figure out this thing is not Devin. We got in the car. Everyone was quiet the whole ride home. The next morning, my parents took Brianna to a psychiatrist. I was so anxious as I waited for them to come back. We figured that Brianna must have had some kind of a mental disorder, but what was it? Why did she think I wasn't the real Devin? I was so curious to understand what was going on inside my sister's head. When they returned, both my parents looked really sad. My mom had been crying nonstop on the way back, and she could barely talk. After a while, my dad came to my room and told me what the doctor had said. Now I'm going to tell you what my dad told me and everything I found out about this on the internet. You might not believe what I'm about to tell you, but unfortunately, all of it is 100% true. According to the doctor, Brianna has a rare psychiatric disorder. It's known as the imposter syndrome. For those of you who want to look it up, the medical term for it is Capra's delusion. People who have this disorder believe that a loved one has been kidnapped and replaced by an identical imposter who's impersonating them. That's right. This is why Brianna thought I wasn't her twin sister. She believed somebody had kidnapped and replaced me with a lookalike. According to her, I'm not the real Devin. The real Devin is being held hostage in some unknown location. The person who's here is an imposter who looks just like her. I realize that all of this is hard to believe. It sounds really out there, but it is a real medical condition. You might be thinking, who do these people think their loved one is abducted by? The most common response is aliens. The cause of this syndrome is still unknown, but for whatever reason, it's more common in women. I read about a bunch of cases online. All of them were about female patients. For instance, a woman believed that her husband had been kidnapped and replaced by an imposter. In another case, a woman was convinced that it was her dog that had been abducted and replaced. Of course, I feel awful for Brianna. There's something about this that makes me even more sad. People with this disorder believe it is the person they love the most that has been kidnapped. According to one theory, they are so afraid of losing that person that the brain reacts in this way. This means that my poor sister might have developed this disorder because she loves me too much. Is this a treatable condition? Unfortunately, no. Talk therapy works to some extent, but in order to see any results, Brianna has to be in therapy for years. I'm still very hopeful. I'll do everything I can for Brianna to recover from this, and one day I'll make her believe that I'm the real Devin.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kevin. These are my bodyguards, Matt and Sal. They come with me wherever I go. At school, at the movie theater, on vacation, at concerts, they are always there. Who do you think they are protecting me from? The answer is myself. You heard that right. My bodyguards are protecting me from myself. What does that even mean? Let me give you an example. 4 years ago, my school organized a field trip to the circus. This was my first time going to the circus. It was so much better than I had expected. There were acrobats doing incredible things in the air, fire eaters, wild animal tamers that shared a cage with their animals. I was watching the show, completely mesmerized because these were brave people like me. Then a man came on to do a bow and arrow act. He was really talented, just like the others. First, he hit a series of balloons tied to a rope. Then his assistant threw 3 balloons up in the air. He pierced those with his arrows as well. The hardest trick in this act was the last one. The assistant covered the man's eyes with a blindfold. She stood in front of him and put an apple on top of her own head. Everyone was holding their breaths. Just as the man was about to shoot, the woman said, "No, I can't do it. It's too dangerous," throwing the apple on the floor and running away. The man was shocked. He turned to the audience. "Well, this has never happened before. Would anyone like to volunteer? Otherwise, I can't perform my act," he said. As soon as I heard this, I stood up and jumped into the ring before anyone could stop me. I picked up the apple from the floor. I put it on my head. The man was still in a blindfold. "The apple is on my head. Let's see if you can hit it," I said. When the man said, "Aren't you scared? I can't see anything right now. I could shoot you instead of the apple," I said. "No, I'm not. In fact, I don't know what fear is." Then the guy took aim while still in a blindfold. He fired his shot. The arrow flew towards me, cut the apple on my head in two, and went deep into the wooden panel behind me. At that moment, the man's assistant came back to the ring screaming. The shooter took off the blindfold, saw me, and screamed, "Who are you?" It was only after the fact that we figured out what was really going on. It turned out that the assistants yelling, "I can't do it," and running away was also a part of the act. They would always plant another circus performer in the audience. When she ran away, that person would go up on stage pretending to be a volunteer. Until that day, they never had a regular person volunteer for this. When I ran into the ring, the circus staff thought I was part of the team. Of course, I wasn't. When they figured out I was a real member of the audience, they were really surprised with my bravery. I'm sure you are also curious as to why I did it. The answer is that I have a very rare genetic disorder. I can't feel fear. My parents were very concerned when they learned about what I did at the circus. My mom said, "Kevin, I know it wasn't your fault, but it can't go on like this. We have to take precautions. We've decided to hire bodyguards for you. They will go everywhere with you and prevent you from hurting yourself." This is how my bodyguards, Matt and Sal, came into my life. My dad is a well-known lawyer. His job pays very well. That's how my parents could afford the bodyguards. But I didn't like it at all. You might think having bodyguards is kind of cool, but going everywhere with them, being constantly under their scrutiny, and most importantly, getting all kinds of weird looks from people is definitely not something you should envy. At the same time, I understand my family. Because of my condition, there's a good chance that I would hurt myself. According to some doctors, it's a miracle that I even made it to this age. As you know, our brain manages all of our emotions. Thanks to our brain, we feel happy, surprised, angry, sad, and, of course, scared too. There's a part of our brain called the amygdala. This part is responsible for fear. It also controls worry and stress, which are closely related to fear. And therein lies my problem. My condition prevents the amygdala from functioning properly. In other words, my brain doesn't know what fear is. And since my brain doesn't know what it is, I can't feel it. For example, if a barking dog runs towards me, I don't get scared. Because I'm not scared, it doesn't occur to me that I should run. I'm sure you can guess what might happen in that situation if I don't run. I can hang out in the middle of the night in a dangerous neighborhood without feeling any kind of uneasiness. Let's imagine that while I'm in that neighborhood, someone attacks a woman. The woman screams for help. In such a situation, I would run to help her without thinking twice. Because I'm never afraid, I don't worry about something bad happening to me. I don't feel stressed out when I'm about to take an important exam. You might think this is a good thing, but it's not. Because I'm not stressed, I can't prepare properly for the exam. Why? Because I'm not scared of getting a bad grade and therefore don't feel like I should study hard. This is why I've always been an average student. Doctors figured out I had this condition when I was 7 years old. My family used to think I was just a very brave kid. For example, when my mom said, "We're going to the dentist tomorrow," I would say, "Yay!" My mom liked that I wasn't scared of going to the dentist. One evening, my mom came to my room to call me for dinner. When she saw me, she screamed at the top of her lungs because I was lying in my bed embracing a giant python. I was surprised that my mom was screaming. When my mom said, "Honey, don't be scared. Just get up slowly and come to me," I asked her if I could bring along my friend. The python was the friend I meant. Apparently, one of our neighbors had kept the python as an exotic pet. It somehow escaped and came into my room through my window. I was so happy to see it. It was my first time touching a snake. I played with it for a long time. When I got tired, I laid down holding my new friend. When my mom walked in, she was obviously scared out of her mind to see me hugging a giant snake. After this incident, they thought it was a little weird for me to be this fearless, and they consulted a doctor. After running some tests, the doctors were able to diagnose me. No fear disease is a very rare genetic condition. There are only 400 recorded cases in the world. The pharmaceutical companies don't even bother to do research on possible treatments for this condition. Last year, a professor came to visit us. We're conducting research at the university. If we study this disorder, perhaps we can also develop a cure for it. But in order to be able to do that, we need your help. We need to run extensive tests on Kevin, he said. I gladly said yes, and I'm so happy that I did. The tests were super fun. For one of the tests, we spent a night at a famous haunted house. They knew I wasn't afraid of physical things, but could I be scared by supernatural stuff? They conducted a test to find out. The research team put a special helmet on my head. It recorded my brain activity. If I got scared, there would be movement in my brain's amygdala, which would be picked up by the helmet. One of the doctors on the team told us about the haunted house before we went there. Every night, at midnight, the owners of the house come out and walk around until morning. But there is a problem. They've been dead for over 100 years. They are walking around as ghosts. My bodyguards were really scared when they heard this. They asked the doctors a ton of questions like, "Is this for real? Who's seen these ghosts? Will they hurt us?" When the clock hit midnight, both the bodyguards and the research team were really tense. They were looking around all the time. They were waiting for a ghost to appear at any moment. I, on the other hand, was watching them with amusement. After a while, I got sleepy and dozed off on the couch. When I woke up in the morning, I had a good laugh seeing Matt and Sal holding each other. They had obviously been very scared. The doctors examined the data from my helmet. Apparently, there had been no fear-related activity in my brain. In fact, the highest activity was seen in the part related to pleasure. The doctors concluded that I wasn't scared of the supernatural either. For another test, we went into a tunnel of terror. That's the place where you have things jumping out at you unexpectedly. The research team wanted to see how my brain would respond when confronted with the unexpected. They had me wear the helmet again. I got into the front car. My bodyguards and the doctors were behind me. We entered the dark tunnel. At one point, a huge skeleton popped up in front of us. I didn't respond at all. Everyone behind me screamed. In a little while, we had gigantic tarantulas and rats fall on us. Again, the bodyguards and the doctors screamed. I guess they weren't expecting anything to fall on us from above. This is how we moved through the tunnel of terror. There were vampires and ghosts popping up along the way. To be honest, after a while, I was bored. I even checked my phone. When we were done, the doctors checked the data. Again, they did not see any fear-related activity. Now they knew I wasn't scared of the unexpected either. They did many more tests like this. They collected a lot of new data about the disorder, but they said it might take years for a drug to be developed because it is a brain-related issue. I told you about all the downsides of my disorder. Are there any benefits to it? Of course there are. For example, I feel very comfortable when I go somewhere and there are a million people that I don't know, because I don't worry about what other people think of me. I can speak really comfortably in front of an audience. I never get nervous. My teachers at school always come to me for such speeches. I hear that some people have a hard time sleeping at night because they are stressed out about the things they've been through during the day. Thanks to my condition, I don't have this problem. I don't know what stress feels like. I only know that it doesn't feel good because I've heard it from others. I'm never unhappy. I'm always in a good mood. And that's one of the good things about my disorder, I guess. Another advantage is that I have no phobias, and I will never have one. I'm never scared of the dark, of spiders, of thunder, of heights, or planes. I can sleep like a baby when flying. Once I was on a plane that had to do an emergency landing. I was so calm that the other passengers were upset with me. Thank you for listening to my story. Please subscribe to get notifications when new videos drop. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it. Bye.